Everyone, delighted to be here with you in Barcelona today. Firstly, a big thank you to the Health Tech Forward team for organizing the event. It's great to see a few more have recovered from the drinks last night, so thank you for attending today's session. So per the intro, I'm Avi. I'm a medical doctor by background and associate partner and clinical safety officer at IBM, where I work in the healthcare technology practice. And I'm also the co-founder of Doctorpreneurs, a non-profit organization and community for medical innovators and entrepreneurs. And really delighted to be joined by three esteemed panelists and leaders in this field today. And before we delve into sort of introductions and opening remarks, maybe a bit of context setting. What are we, 10:30 on day two? And we've had probably a lot of discussion on AI. I mean, we've just had three sessions this morning. So a surprise, another AI panel. However, I promise you we're going to make things a little bit different. So we're going to test some of the panelists out. However, obviously, this is a big topic. It's a big theme. I'm sure a lot of you are working in the space already. I'm sure a lot of you are fatigued of talking about the space already. So we'll try and delve into, as the title says, some of the challenges specifically around scaling AI adoption in healthcare. And despite all the talk and all the hype and all the progress that's been made, if you think about AI adoption at scale, we're still fairly limited across healthcare systems, and I think that's common internationally. And so we'll probably try and explore really what's holding us back. So with that, I'm going to take a seat, and then I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves and share a few opening remarks. So why don't we start over here with Lucy?
Yeah, hi everyone. Great to be back this side of the pond. I'm Lucy, Chief of Staff and Head of Policy for the Coalition for Health AI, CHAI. CHAI is, if you think about, use the analogy of a car. When you buy a car, you know it's been through the crash dummy testing. You know it's safe to drive. There's no existing analogy for healthcare AI at the moment. What CHAI is creating testing and evaluation facilities through its assurance lab network to test healthcare AI so that health systems or payers, whoever the market is, feel comfortable with what they're buying. So we do that by developing best practice guidance through actually certifying these assurance labs to be safe and consistent, and issuing models with model cards like nutrition labels so that people feel much more equipped with what they're buying.
Mm-hmm.
Annie?
Hi, I'm Annie. I'm a managing partner and founder of Cross-Border Impact Ventures. Our funds are really targeting healthcare outcomes for women and children globally, meaning that in our world, what we do is we source some of the best companies that we can find that target healthcare outcomes for women and children, but within that universe, we select those companies that have an interest in bringing their technologies into Africa and India and other emerging markets to achieve more impact, more reach with their technologies. Really excited to be here amongst this panel.
And Eckhardt?
Yeah, hi. Good morning, everybody. I'm Eckhardt. I'm a partner at Thériault Capital. We are a Berlin-based venture fund investing early stage pre-seed to Series A. Just kicking off our second fund, beginning of next year. And yeah, our focus is digital health tech in Europe. And yeah, hopefully scaling them in health systems and beyond and wherever it's possible, and in the end, benefit a lot of people and patients.
Brilliant. So let's kick off. And building on the last panel, there were some really interesting insights there, and they talked a lot about AI for radiology as one example use case. And let's start with the title in terms of a reality check, and maybe with you, Eckhardt. In terms of adoption at scale, where are we really? And it'd be good to get from an international perspective as well. And also thinking of, let's put AI for radiology aside for a second, other use cases where you see we're making a real success, and why that's the case.
Yeah, so I think I start with a meme that I really liked recently, and maybe someone has seen it. It's a picture of, I think, just a traffic jam in LA or somewhere, and it's about, in 2017, Google CEO promised us radiology to be replaced by AI, and Elon Musk promised us self-driving cars, and it's basically just radiologists and traffic jams now still going to work. And I think there is, unfortunately, I think, quite a truth still about that. Nonetheless, I mean, I'm an optimist day in and day out, and we invested in an AI for radiology company. I think that field is, at the forefront, but it's still relatively small, right? So I think like how many day-to-day radiologists really benefit or increase their efficiency by AI, it's probably still a small percentage amount. So overall, I think we're still, even with the, let's say, classical AI solutions or non-generative AI solutions, still in early innings, is my feeling. There are more and more customers globally. And then I think there was one aspect that goes back to the meme that maybe was also not too fortunate. I think the 2021 hype in venture capital also was felt everywhere in AI in healthcare. And in the end, I think since then, people have not delivered yet. So I think we are not at scale yet, but it's going in a very, very good direction. I think it's growing linearly, not yet exponentially. But I think in the classical AI agents, I believe it is adopting well. And I still believe with the generative AI solutions that now come to market, there might be a tipping point, right? Where, and I think we heard in the panel before, I think every healthcare company, be it medtech, pharma, but also health system providers, is thinking about AI now, right? With maybe the more classical solutions, it was more like, yeah, that sounds like interesting, maybe we can use it. I think now it's on top of everybody's mind, and I think this might switch. And then, yeah, I think I look into a bright future of, let's say, an AI-enabled healthcare.
Brilliant. And so just to build on that, and Annie, maybe to bring you in here. So usually when I'm thinking about use cases myself, I tend to use the analogy around front, middle, and back office, right? Where, front office being the sort of more high-risk, highly regulated use cases and applications that directly impact patient care, clinical decision support tools, AI for radiology, all that sort of stuff. Very high risk and potentially a lot of benefit. And then middle and back office, obviously, around more administrative workflows and then back office functions. And look, I've been working in this space for over 8 years, and I've probably worked on solutions across the whole spectrum of that. Where do you see within that, again, where do you think in terms of the short term, we're going to see most progress in terms of adoption?
So in terms of our portfolio, what we've seen really is AI in sort of 3 broad categories. One is sort of at the discovery stage, so where AI is being used by different teams to develop solutions, but ultimately the product may be an assay, may be something else, but it's never really, the AI is not part of the final thing you sell to the medical community. We've seen AI, a little bit more in your face in terms of decision support and such. And then we see a lot of AI and machine learning integrated into medical devices that can do things that we really couldn't do 10, 20 years ago, like analyzing multimodal signals and such. Maybe detecting the heart rate of the mother compared to the child, and things of that nature. With respect to, I think this question applies a bit more to what I'll call the more in-your-face AI that helps with decision support. What we've seen in our portfolios, we've had more success where the AI is integrated in, good old boring software as a service solutions. So we recently exited Thériault, a French company in the fetal ultrasound space. And when we did the diligence on that company, I was sort of looking through all the AI platforms that had to do with imaging. And I think at the time we summed up the revenue, and it was something really exciting, like 10 million industry-wide. So nothing makes a VC feel better when that's what you look at. But what got us excited about Thériault was that they tacked on all their AI tools on a really slick reporting platform that was fixing some major work process flow problems that were prevalent across the world. And this was a French company entering the US market, and what we saw was the reporting needs were slightly different in different markets, but there were some common elements there. The software was able to work with the standard images that all the ultrasounds were using. And so we got really excited because in a way the AI was being snuck in. And it was just by providing insights to the radiologists, making them work a little bit faster. It was reorganizing the images, doing quality assurance. So features that, while it is a little scary, I think, let's face it, medical doctors are nervous when a new tool is being introduced, but the way that the software introduced the AI was sort of a little bit more acceptable to the community. And I would say for those kinds of tools, that's what we'd be looking for is AI as an add-on into useful software as opposed to on its own. I think the medical community is not ready yet.
Brilliant. So let's build on that nervousness and Lucy, bring you in here. And let's get into the meat of sort of challenges of scaling AI, right? So as a clinical safety officer for IBM, for me, safety is front and paramount in everything, not just AI, but digital health more generally. And obviously, we know the risks around hallucinations and potentially the impact that can have in a clinical setting. We heard earlier about cybersecurity risks, and I'm sure you talked also about transparency and nutrition labels. But what do you think from the work you're doing are sort of the biggest barriers right now in terms of this adoption at scale?
Yeah, so I think I won't, steal the investor side of it, but everyone in the US, as soon as I arrived, just said, follow the dollar. And, we do have, I think healthcare investments are growing twice, I'm going to check my panel, but twice as quickly as other tech investments. And actually, AI in healthcare is accounting for 25% of healthcare investment at the moment. But actually, only 5% of companies have actually made it past seed stage. So the maturity of companies is still really low, and a lot of really amazing innovations are dying. I think there's a lot of reasons why that is. I think one is, at the moment in the US, AI is not reimbursable. So the only kind of play that you can make to a health system when you're kind of selling into them is an efficiency play or productivity play. And it's incredibly hard to actually measure that. Other than just, we call it pilotitis, but others just doing loads and loads of pilots, there's just not a great way to actually integrate into workflows and show that, you do save time, you do save cost, you are improving access, the quintuple aim. So there's, I think, that piece. I think regulation is really, I'm head of policy for CHAI, so obviously looking at the US regulation primarily, but obviously EU AI Act is very much bearing down on the US as well. There's a really, in the absence of federal regulation, a lot of states coming out, and actually it's just a really, if you're a health system that is actually operating in 7 or 8 different states, they have wildly different regulations across the states, and so it's incredibly hard. It's just translating a complete paralysis. They don't know what they are liable for. There's a much more litigious culture in the US than the UK, so they don't know what they're liable for. The regulation's a mess. So what CHAI is doing in this space is bringing forward private sector-led, industry-led best practice guidance to say, in the very unnavigable waters of regulation right now in healthcare AI, this is what we think best practice for deployment and development is in certain use cases, because we think we're really needs-led. We're going to the health system saying, what do you need? What is the lowest form of information you need from the model developer to feel comfortable with deployment, and then we go to the developer and say, does this, are you happy to share this? Obviously they have IP is a really important part of a model developer that you don't want to get them to disclose too much, but we are that bridge in between developer and health systems. We're on the side of adoption. We want AI to work, but we understand that with all of these problems, there needs to be, the lowest form, generalizable information that they can feel comfortable with that deployment. So there's many more challenges, but I think those are the ones that we're trying to solve, at least at CHAI.
And just to stay with you for a second on that, because you mentioned, and you're hinting at the point again around that transparency about how the model's been developed and what data's been used and testing for bias and stuff. And we actually use the same term at IBM around a nutrition label for AI, again, being that sort of that minimum amount of information to provide to whether it's the purchaser or the end user to explain that. But how much transparency do you think is actually necessary across across the space? I mean, to what level does the clinician need to know that level of detail? To what level does the patient need to know how AI has been used across their sort of healthcare journey? Because it's hard, right?
Yeah, I think it completely varies. Personally, I don't need to know. I want a good quality assessment, and I want to receive good care. How that is delivered is up to the health system.
You don't mind if a doctor is using ChatGPT on the side, unregulated maybe, to summarize your notes, and because it's happening today. I can tell you, surveys have been done,
no summarization,
they are using it unregulated. Yeah,
you're right. I don't know. It totally depends by person, totally depends by health system. I think ultimately we are saying to the developers, we don't need to know exactly what data you've used to train your model. What we're doing is going to set the standard, and if you don't meet it, if we say like you have to perform across all these ethnicity groups or all the different geographical populations, and if you don't achieve accuracy scores of whatever the definition is, then go back and retrain. Yep. So we're not saying we need to know exactly which populations you trained your data on. We're just saying like here is the standard, and if you don't meet it, we're not going to get that level. Again, there's a huge conversation we're having is like, what do the fields need to be on a model card? Like, on the nutrition label, it's proteins, carbohydrates. What is the equivalent? Obviously, transparency, a huge piece of that. I think ultimately, like, we always use the analogy like clinical risk scores. As a doctor, you're not querying how they got to the clinical risk score. You trust that the clinical risk score. So we are trying to build trust in the processes that we've done within CHAI, so that actually when you get the score, the accuracy score, the empathy score, whatever the score is, you trust that actually that has been a process that we can all agree on. So a long way to go, but we're getting there.
Thank you. And Eckhardt, maybe to bring you back in, so from your perspective as an investor in the space, and what do you see? We've talked about some of the challenges from a safety, transparency perspective, regulation, governance, the funding, and the way reimbursement is. What do you see as sort of the biggest barrier right now to doing this at scale?
So we have a couple of AI companies in our portfolio, and like just to take one example, there's like a decision support solution, and we always look at like it's 5 things I think those companies have to get right? So they have to get the data, they have to build the algorithm, they have to get it certified, regulated, then they get paid somehow for it, and they have to get it adopted. And my feeling is it's actually adoption in the terms of, are the people in the health systems day-to-day interested in using my solution the hardest, right? I actually also don't worry too much about regulation. I think at the moment on generative AI, we are, let's say at least on the administrative side, we are quite relaxed. I think that will backlash at some point. But generally, so for me, it's mainly about the, let's say, change of human behavior. And I think what hasn't worked really in healthcare was product-led sales or bottom-up I guess, product innovation. Though I think if you have a great product that people want to use, that can work. And if I think back 5-10 years ago, I think every doctor started using WhatsApp to send radiology pictures from one to the other, and that's highly forbidden in Germany, at least.
Same in the UK?
Yeah, from a private...
Everywhere.
But everybody uses it, and you just mentioned...
Still using it,
I think junior doctors now, like they see a new case, they go to the restrooms, they quickly talk to Whisper, like ChatGPT, and what would be the next steps I should do here, and I think they get an answer. It might not be perfect, right? It might be hallucinated, but it helps them to take a step forward. And in the end, I think that's how we currently look at it. Who is really able to bring something into the clinical practice day to day, and then have it go maybe from the first ward to the second ward to the third ward, and at some point it flips, and the people say, hey, don't take that away from me anymore. And then, of course, we have to build a business model around it. It has to be regulated, and it has to, of course, be an attractive also a business for us. But that's, for me, I think, the biggest challenge, which I see currently being able to be tackled, because people are opening up to just, it's so integrated into their workflows, it can be voice only, that I think that will be solved, and that's why I think we're going to do a couple of more investments in that space.
Brilliant. And let's stay on the investor theme. Annie, you're based in Toronto, right? And probably got an international perspective as an investor, but also keen to understand how things are on the ground in Canada. Again, what do you see as some of the barriers, maybe building on the question from your side, but then also as an investor, with that hat on, what do you look for when you're looking at all these companies that are pitching their solutions, and what advice can you give?
So because we're a health impact fund, we really look for those solutions that are closer to the patients and solve medical problems. So we're less interested if it's something that's just purely making the systems work better without really driving to health outcomes. And so again, going back to sort of these 3 types of verticals, lately we've done a lot of work on certain products that are solving problems that haven't been solved before. And so one of our recent investments in with an AI component of it is a fetal pulse oximetry solution where you can actually detect and differentiate the oxygenation level of the fetus during delivery for the first time ever. And ultimately, for medical products like that are devices, monitoring tools, it's really about the inhuman performance. And so it's not really, like, I think everyone wants to be excited about AI. It's a great buzzword. I use it a million times when I raise capital for funds, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about the clinical studies. Does it work? Does it not work? Does it perform, at a standard that is well beyond what previous products were able to do? If the technology achieves that, then it will find a market, so long as you can not change too much the ways practitioners are delivering care. That's the other thing that we really pay attention to. If you're asking a medical doctor to completely change the care pathway, that's really tough. That's not generally in the time frame of VC investments. That's the other piece. Like, we need to exit companies within 4 to 5 years. And so if we're looking at a technology, particularly because we do med tech, so if you're changing the care pathway, doctors are unlikely to do that in the short term. And so we really look for products that fit in the care pathway, that are developed intelligently, and where the performance is outstanding.
Yeah. And just to build on that, I mean, a comment was made, I think, in the last panel around, flipping it in terms of, again, I'm sure you all say this to all the companies you work with, don't be technology-led, start with the problem, understand what you're trying to achieve, and if AI or generative AI or whatever is part of the solution to that, then brilliant, but if it's not, then you don't need to be distracted, and also the importance of change management in that pathway, right?
The reality is that today it's pretty rare you're looking at something that hasn't been developed with AI or machine learning as a component. It's so much more efficient. Yesterday I was at a talk, somebody was talking about, using AI and machine learning on how to optimize your regulatory files.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not making use of these tools today, I mean, you're really missing an opportunity. We use it all the time, even to do our work when we do investment reviews. So I do think it's just natural that it should be there. But ultimately, in our sector, it's got to prove out, in the clinical validation work.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Lucy. Yeah.
Just you mentioned research, and before CHI, I was at Stanford Medical School in the research team, and we led a JAMA paper that looked at every single paper that's ever been written on testing and evaluating large language models in healthcare. And if you see any grey hairs, that's why it took so long. But yeah, we then categorized and looked at what was missing. And actually, I think only 5% of any papers that have been written have been looking at real world patient data.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they sit ChatGPT through a medical licensing exam and say it performed 90% accuracy, good to go, which is putting a car through a multiple choice test and certifying it can drive. It's just not enough. And I think the research community are paralyzed with how to do these pilots without the, in absence of patient care data being available to do this testing on. So I think that is would be a huge unlocker if more medical databases were available to do this testing on. But by and large, we don't know how this technology works still. And as a health system, you're looking at the research community to qualify whether models work. We don't have that knowledge right now. So I think there's still a huge way to go from the research community.
And just on that, what's your view, given you've brought this up, what's your view on an approach to using synthetic data, for example, as to sort of fill some of those voids? Or is that potentially part of the solution, do you think, or is that going to bring more issues?
And maybe, but there's a company like MD Clone that we're looking at to try and they've done a huge partnership with the VA in the US to synthesize some of that data for better testing. But health systems don't want to share their data even if it's going to be synthesized. That is their IP, that's their asset. We don't have a clear value add for them. There's not data commercialization is not robust enough to say that if I'm going to share my data, even if it's synthesized into a huge data lake that then can be used for medical data testing, yeah, that's not like a proposition that they feel comfortable with yet, but hopefully, like that would be incredible. Stanford's been leading a huge effort in this space called Medline, but others need to feed it in. We can't just have Stanford data. It needs, like, it's not representative enough. It needs to be like whole population view. So
Brilliant. Look, the clock is counting down. So my final question to you all, similar to sort of ending to the last one, is firstly, sort of what's next on each of your horizons individually in terms of what you're focused on, but also where do you think we're going to be in 2030 in terms of AI adoption at scale? So maybe Eckhardt, starting with you.
Yeah, then trying to be quick. So I think what I'm really interested in is like who's winning the interface, either with the patient or with the doctor or nurse, like who is maybe the interface of choice, and that can be an app or that can be a voice interface, right? That then maybe handles more and more of like questions, topics that a person has during day to day. So I think like whoever is building more general on that side, I think the AI scribes might be an interface for providers, for example. And then the future, I like the perspective, like what are people at the forefront of innovation doing now that might be everybody doing in 10 years. And I just had a board this meeting this week, and there was a CEO, and he said like whenever he's driving, and I recommend everybody trying that, he's talking to ChatGPT about any strategic topic he has in mind, and in the end he says, please summarize and send me an email with our conversation, and it helps him really to structure like whatever he has planned in that week, and it's crazily efficient, he says. He does it on like the 1 hour drive to the airport on Monday mornings. Anyway, so I believe
that's a great tip. I like that.
I think
I
what
might
the
try
people
that.
do, I think everybody does it in 10 years with
Sure.
some kind of agent enablement.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Annie?
I think two areas. Of course, we're very focused on women and children. So I do think the integration of AI and machine learning in medical devices and diagnostics will allow for much, for the ability to diagnose disease much earlier, much more efficiently, and much more precisely for different kinds of people, even when we present differently with certain disease areas. And a bit similar, I do think, it will take time, but over the course of time, decision support will be there. I don't think that we'll see medical doctors 10 years from now just relying on their gut feel, memory, and personal knowledge. I think there will be these platforms that they get comfortable in using to ensure they don't miss anything.
Yeah, I think so. What we're working on, we have 4,000 members within CHAI, and every major health system and ed tech company represented within that. I think we're now going through a process of just like ramping up use case guidance and then testing those use cases and then issuing model cards. So just, building into like the payer and life sciences community is what we're focused on right now. I'd love to speak to anyone who's interested. And then where are we going to be in 2030? I think probably not that far away from now. I mean, you're the optimist. I'm probably more of the realist. No, joking. But like, hopefully we have some.
This panel probably existed 5 years ago, saying the same things, the same challenges, and the same vision, maybe.
Yeah. Hopefully we just have like some of the infrastructures in place. So like, things like the billing codes or like, research availability. Like, hopefully that's moved forwards, which translates to like, a few more perforated use cases that are actually like note summarization is a really healthy market in the US right now and globally. And like, hopefully there's just more examples of when the market's kind of really healthy within different use cases,
Brilliant, thank you. And I look, from my perspective, as I mentioned earlier, we're at IBM very much focused on the sort of middle and back office use case, as a lot of you know, and I'm sure across all health systems, we have a workforce and massive productivity crisis in the NHS. There are a lot of crises in the NHS, and so we're looking at how we can use AI and generative AI to really tackle some of those productivity challenges and unlock efficiency in relatively lower risk scenario, but I also agree with the point that doctors are already using these tools as AI assistants today, but I foresee that by 2030, they will be using a regulated version of an approved tool to support them in their journey. And maybe we will be on stage talking about the same things, but maybe a little bit further ahead. So with that, we're out of time. Please join me in thanking the panelists for their insights today. Thank you so much.